I want to tell you about called me a broke loser in front of 40 people. And why I didn't say a single word back. My name is Marcus. I'm 45 years old, and for the last 16 years I've raised my daughter alone. Tonight, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened at my family's reunion. The whole thing. Start to finish Benkiolai the end. Why I just stood there and smiled while they laughed at me. When's the last time you upgraded that suit, Marcus? Some of us actually made something of ourselves. That was Terrell. Mikuza. He said it loud enough that half the table heard it, and most of them laughed. My mother was sitting right there. She didn't correct him. She just looked down at her plate and moved a piece of chicken around with her fork. I checked my watch. 7:49. I didn't say anything to Terrell. I want you to remember that number, 7:49, because in exactly 11 minutes, this entire room was going to feel very different than it did right then. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Because you need to understand what got me to that ballroom in an 8-year-old suit in the first place, 16 years ago. I was 29 years old, and I had a 6-month-old baby girl named Amara and a wife who packed his suitcases on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. She left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm not going to tell you everything it said, but the short version is that she wasn't built for the life we were living, and she wasn't coming back. I read that note exactly once. Then I folded it, put it in the top drawer of my dresser, and I never opened that drawer again. Not once in 16 years. I want to be honest with you about what those next few years actually looked like. Because I think people hear single dad and they picture something a little softer than what it actually was. I worked nights at a shipping warehouse, 11 p.m.s in trucks, forklift work or whatever doing. I'd clock out at 7, drive straight to my sister-in-law's place to pick up Amara, get her fed and dressed, drop her at school by 8:30, and then I'd go home and try to sleep. No in mi bed. On the couche. Because I didn't trust myself not to sleep through my alarm in a real bed. And if I slept through my alarm, nobody was picking that little girl up at 3 o'clock. So I slept sitting up on a couch for 6 years. 3 hours at a time, and I picked her up every single afternoon. Ranorschein, Siko. For 6 straight years. I'm telling you this part slowly because I want you to sit with it for a second. Sieur? Et veridaille. Nobody clapped for that. Nobody was supposed to. My family had opinions about all of this, and they were not shy about sharing them. Mimote told me once, at more than that Amara need influence, that I couldn't do this properly on my own, that I should find somebody. My brother Devon, who is 2 years younger than me and has always been the more polished one, made a joke at a cookout when Amara was about 4. He called me part-time dad. It was meant as a joke. Everybody laughed, including me, because what else are you going to do at a family cookout? But that name stuck. 15 years it stuck. 15 years of part-time dad, even though I never once missed a pickup. Never once missed a school play. Never once missed a single day of actually being there. Funny how a joke like that just calcifies, becomes the thing everybody quietly believes about you. Even when the facts say otherwise. Amara found her thing early. She was 9 years old when I took her to an air show 2 states over, saved up for 8 months to afford the gas, the tickets, the hotel, all of it, and she stood there with her mouth open for 3 straight hours watching those planes. Tatuait. That was the whole rest of her life, decided in one afternoon. By 16, she could recite pilot certification requirements the way other kids recite batting averages. By 18, she got accepted into a flight training program. Agudone. The kind that costs more in a single year than I made in that same year at the warehouse. I didn't tell her how I paid for the first year. I want to tell you now because I never told anybody in my family, and they're about to find out the same time you do. I sold my truck, the only vehicle I owned. And for 2 years, I took a bus to work, an hour and a half each way, every single day, so that my daughter could go chase the thing she loved. Amara didn't find out about the bus until after she'd already graduated. She saw a bus pass fall out of my jacket pocket one day by accident, and she asked me about it. And I told her the truth because there wasn't really a way around it at that point. Je crie. Premier did not. I wasn't looking for that reaction. I was just answering a question, so that's the 16 years, compressed down into a few minutes for you. Now, let me take you back to tonight. Because this is where it gets interesting. Tonight was the 20th year my family has held this reunion. En tissuaire, my blizzard. She's the one who actually holds this family together. Decided to make it a real event. A ballroom at the downtown hotel. Cocktail à tir. A hired photographer working the room all night. String lights. A small band. The whole production. I almost didn't go. I'd just come off a double shift the night before, and I was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep. My one good suit is 8 years old. I know that because I bought it for Amara's high school graduation. And I've worn it to exactly for things since then. And I could probably tell you the date of every single one. Amara had texted me earlier that day saying she might be a few minutes late. Something about a scheduling thing at work she couldn't get out of. I didn't think much of it. She's always a little vague about her schedule. And I've learned not to push, so I walked into that ballroom alone. In that same 8-year-old suit, and I felt it the second I stepped through the door. You know that feeling when a room sizes you up before you've said a word. The lapels on that jacket haven't been in style in years. There's a small worn patch at the left elbow that doesn't show in bad light, but shows just fine under a chandelier. I felt every single person in that room measure me against everyone else in there. An upshirt on première nuit out anyway, because Amara loves seeing her cousins. And I wasn't going to let my own pride cost her that. Even if she wasn't there yet to see it, my brother Devon greeted me at the bar. Tailored blazer, obviously new, a watch on his wrist that cost more than my truck did when I still had one. The handshake was fine, efficient, exactly as long as politeness required and not 1 second longer. My mother kissed my cheek and immediately asked how Amara's little job was going. That's the phrase she used. Little job, the same way you'd ask a child about a hobby they'll probably grow out of. I told her Amara was doing well. My mother nodded like she'd expected as much and turned to talk to someone else. I found a spot near the edge of the room. Close to a table, but not really part of any conversation. And I just existed there for a while. Watched the room. This is the part of these events that nobody tells you about, the standing alone part. Holding a drink you're not really drinking. Watching everyone else orbit each other, while you orbit nothing in particular. That's when Terrell found me. Terrell is my cousin, about 40. Always got a glass of champagne in his hand at these things. Always got something clever to say. I don't think he's a cruel person exactly. I think he's the kind of person who says the sharp thing because it gets a laugh. And he's gotten so used to the laugh that he stopped noticing who it costs. Tonight it cost me. When's the last time you upgraded that suit, Marcus? Some of us actually made something of ourselves. And there it was. That's the line I opened with. That's the moment this whole story turns on. I want you to understand something about how I responded. Because I think it matters. I didn't get angry. I didn't have some retort loaded up. I genuinely didn't feel much of anything in that moment except a strange "Que patience," because I knew something none of them in that room knew yet. I checked my watch. 7:49. I knew, almost to the minute, where my daughter was right then. And I knew exactly what she'd be wearing when she finally walked through those doors. Whatever Terrell thought he'd just won, he'd won it against a version of the story he didn't actually have all the pieces to. I'm not going to rush through the next 11 minutes, because I think they matter just as much as what happened after. I stood near that table while the party moved around me. My mother laughed at something across the room. Devin was deep in conversation with a cousin about a property he'd just closed on. Terrell had moved on to some other joke at some other table, already forgetting the one he'd made at my expense. The way people do when the joke cost them nothing. I watched the big doors at the far end of the ballroom, those tall double doors. The hotel staff had propped open earlier for the photographer, then quietly closed once the event got underway. 7:52. I thought about the note in my dresser drawer, which I hadn't thought about in longer than I could remember. 16 years since that Tuesday morning. I thought about the bus route, the couch, the 6 years of 3-hour naps. None of it felt like a sacrifice while it was happening. It just felt like Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then a few thousand more days after that. It's only in a room like this one, surrounded by people measuring you by your suit, that the word sacrifice even